Welcome to our first Strong Talks by Strong Fitness Magazine. I'm your host, Gail Mitch, and today, episode 1, we're here with Brittany Chapman. She is the current cover athlete of the special edition Best Body issue. And if you haven't seen the copy yet, the cover is gorgeous, as is Brittany. And I'm so excited to kind of like dig in and get to know you better and show our audience and our readers what is so special about you and to connect with you on a deeper level than just the pages in the magazine to make it kind of come to life. So welcome, first of all.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here with you today. Now, Brittany and I kind of met recently and pretty much hit it off right away. We're both moms in our 40s, and Brittany has been in the fitness industry for so many years. She has such a ton of knowledge, and I'm really excited to kind of dig into that today so that, all this practical knowledge can be really helpful along everyone's fitness journeys. But I'd like to start off with a little bit about your background. So tell us kind of like how you got into fitness initially and kind of like little quick overview of your journey through fitness.
Sure. Okay. So I got into fitness kind of by accident, I kind of always say. So fell in love with working out in high school in the high school gym. I think as I've told you before, but I jumped on the leg press and I was like going for it and it felt so good. And I was like, oh, wow, girls can be strong. And I was stronger than like all the boys, the other 16-year-old boys that, didn't have any leg strength. And I was a dancer. So I was just like giving her. And I just instantly in that moment was like, wow, this feels amazing. This is something I need to do for the rest of my life. And so I started getting really serious into fitness. And then that led me down the road of doing bodybuilding competitions. And so when I started training for those, I was getting in really good shape. And so a bunch of people were always just like asking me questions and like, what do you do? And like, what's your training routine? And can I come to the gym with you? And, what are you eating? And just like, tell me all the things. And I just loved it so much that I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do this as like a fun, like summer job or like a fun job for like a year. And literally almost 20 years later, I'm still doing my fun job. And my coaching
Yes.
practice has obviously shifted and evolved over that time as I've grown as a woman and a mother and all of these different things. But the one thing that's always rang true is I'm very passionate about helping other women discover their love for health and fitness. It's why I love Strong. It's like finding their strong and, just falling in love with that feeling of like weight training, putting on muscle, getting, fit and not necessarily just hyper focusing on being thin and shrinking ourselves and being small and being frail and looking this very specific way. And that's something that I'm really proud of in my coaching practice is that no one woman like trains the same. No one woman is expected to like have the same goals or anything, but we have a clear
Right.
method that works for everyone. And part of that is through strength training.
That's awesome. So I know we both grew up, in the 80s and 90s when, those like waif type models, that heroin chic look was in. And we had discussed kind of how both we were like deeply affected by that because, you think you're supposed to look like that and you're wondering like why your body doesn't look like that. And thank God,
Yeah.
like mainstream media has shifted. And if you guys have seen Brittany's cover and her beautiful workout layouts in the magazine, you'll see that she has a womanly body. It is gorgeous. It is healthy. It is strong. So tell me for you, like, what is the biggest shift you've had since, growing up with that kind of like, we'll just call it like a disordered dieting
Yeah.
mindset in general, and what it feels like now being like in this strong, beautiful, like womanly body.
Mm. That's, yeah. When I was growing up, as we talked about, I was like, my mom was always on a diet, bless her heart. I love her to death. She's still on a diet to this day. So it was just always this exposure to this. And then, Kate Moss and like, even all the supermodels at the time, they're very, very thin. Like looking back, you're like, oh yeah, like Christina Aguilera, back in the day and now again. But like super, super thin. And Britney Spears was super, super thin. So like all these icons that we kind of grew up watching, even women like, bless her heart, I think she's gorgeous, but like Jamie Easton, she was like very,
Mm-hmm.
very tiny, and so we would have all these representations of these women that were very, very thin. And I was a young woman who developed early on. Like I was the girl in grade 5 that had boobs and like had my period
Yep.
and didn't look like my friends. My body took shape. I was like the tallest girl in grade 5 or 6, which is hilarious because I'm 5'2". But I was like the tallest girl at that point. And so, I just was constantly looking around at all the other girls, and I was in dancing. And so my ballet teacher was always like, oh, we have to, I was going to do this costume, but I have to design it around Brittany's body because, she has breasts and bum.
Mm.
And so I was just always my body was always being like focused on. And so then I started focusing on that, and I was like, I have to be as thin as possible. And so although I shared the story about the leg press, but the funny part of that is like I literally did boot camp classes, spin classes, ran on the treadmill for 2 hours, and then would do the leg press, and then I'd leave the gym because I was like, oh, I can't get big. So I do like literally like 250 repetitions on the leg press so that I was doing toning reps, and knew nothing about nutrition. Then got into bodybuilding and was again just, you know, bodybuilding has so many great aspects of it. I'm not here to knock bodybuilding, but for me, as coming from a eating disordered background where I actually had clinically diagnosed anorexia, it was just another form of restriction, but I could like
Sure.
justify it because I
Right.
was like, oh, it's okay because it's for a bodybuilding show. I can be 8% body fat because I'm bodybuilding, and so for me, I just used it as something to put a band-aid over something that truly needed stitches.
Right.
And so after years of restriction through anorexia growing up and then getting into bodybuilding, and like I was the girl that like weighed everything down to a gram in my on season and off season. Like I was very, very, very strict with
Wow.
everything. Like if I had a gram of extra rice, I would like take it out of my bowl. Like that's how crazy I
Wow.
was in the like off season as well. And one day I sent in my progress photos to my coach, and I was like 7% body fat at this point in time. And I actually felt like I was dying. Like I actually felt like I was dying. I was
It's
so
misery. It's living in misery.
misery. It was pure misery. I was in chronic pain. My joints hurt. I was doing 2 to 3 hours of cardio a day. I was eating like, I think like 750 or 800 calories a day. Like I was eating
Oh my
like
gosh.
tilapia and asparagus for breakfast. Like it was obnoxious. And I remember sending my like detailed check into my coach, and all he wrote back is, "You're fat, keep going." And that was for me.
Wow.
I
Wow.
looked at that and I sat there and I was like, fuck this. Like, this is
Yeah.
BS. No one, this is so unhealthy. And for that, in that moment, I saw it for what it was, which was me diving into something else, justifying it, and literally killing myself. And I was like, I have gotten myself down to like 6 or 7% body fat as a woman, which is really, really hard.
And
And it's still like,
unhealthy and
it's so unhealthy, like all of the things, right? And I
yeah.
still just wasn't small enough. Do you know what I mean? It's like I had literally gotten every single ounce of fat off my body almost, and I still was like, I'm not small enough. I'm still not small enough. And that's when I was like,
Isn't it?
you got a big, this is a big problem.
Yeah, I think it's amazing because I think so many people, so many women think if I could just be smaller, if I could just lose this,
Yeah,
if my butt looked this way, I would just be happier.
exactly. Yes.
And what would you say to that person that's like, hey, if I just was smaller, what would you say to them?
It's just never enough. It's never going to be enough. And there's something inside of you that's like broken that needs to be fixed. And
Yeah,
that's just plain and simple. It's like, it doesn't matter how small you are. You're not going to change. You can't fix what's broken by literally stripping all the body fat off of your body and basically killing
right.
yourself to do it. And so, yeah, so then I also realized as well, like, because, when you're around this bodybuilding scene, you realize everyone's structure is just so different. So you can starve yourself as much as you want, but like I naturally, for example, have an X frame. I naturally have a super small waist. I go out at the hips. I go up in the shoulders. Like I just have that genetic structure. And I've had people like mom friends like, how did you get your stomach to get so small? I'm like, I didn't. Literally, this is just my structure. And they're like,
Right.
oh, you don't have any tips or tricks? I'm like, nope. Literally, I was born this way. Like the end. And it's just, I think when women can start to really embrace their genetic structure. And so that's what I did. I set on a path where I was like, I'm going to eat for nourishment. I'm going to learn to listen to my body cues. I'm going to eat till I'm
Yes.
satisfied. I started, forcing myself to eat things like an apple. Like I was terrified of eating apples and avocado and anything that wasn't like tilapia or chicken breast. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be 100 pounds.
Mm.
Or sorry, not 100 pounds, like 200 pounds. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I had a fear of that. And so I started challenging myself to just start incorporating nourishing foods. And I was like, oh wow, I
Yes.
didn't, put on 25 pounds from eating one potato or eating an apple or having, I was like, oh, pineapple
Right.
taste. And then I started realizing like I'd been missing out on all of this stuff because I was so worried about trying to be this person that I wasn't and trying to be 100 pounds and all of these different things. And so I just put on muscle and I trained for the body that I wanted. And I allowed myself to put body fat on. And I went to extensive therapy to like work through these things. I'm still in therapy over this. And I have no shame in that because therapy is huge. It
It's
is a
amazing.
miracle worker. And
Yes.
so it's like as soon as I got over that stigma that there was like something wrong with me and I went and actually got help, then I was like, oh wow, like I'm just a curvy girl and I just have like a thick body and I just have muscles. I put on muscle like relatively easy. I say that loosely, but I put on muscle like
Right.
easier than
Yes.
some people. And I have a bubbly butt and I have thick legs. And I was like, I'm just gonna own this because I can either live like this for the rest of my life and be miserable, unhappy, obsessed, up, down, all over the place, or I can just be like,
Yeah.
take it or leave it. This is who I am. And that's why I was so excited and proud and like honored to be on the cover of Strong because I was like, I have a real body with like real curves and like muscle, and I'm not like a stick, and I'm not like 10% body fat, and
Hmm.
and that again, no shame to the women that look like that. But just for me, I was like so proud to like own that and be like, yeah, I'm 41 and I have a 3-year-old, and here I am as like a cover model, and it just felt like so good.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, we'll be back in just a moment here talking about the biggest shift in Brittany's whole journey. Hey, you, are you ready to embark on a transformation journey to a healthier, happier you? Join a community of like minded women by subscribing to Strong Fitness Magazine today. All right, we are back with cover athlete Brittany Chapman. And, we've talked about her background and where she was and where she is now. But one of the biggest things that shifted in your life was getting pregnant, having your daughter. So tell us a little bit about how that changed the love you have for your body and being a woman.
Mm. Um, I know as you and I talked about prior to this, we've had lots of conversations, but for me, I was always paranoid about getting pregnant. Like when I was unwell, I didn't want to have children. I had decided in my mind that I was never going to have children because, I was in the fitness industry and I felt like I had to like live up to this certain image and like have a six pack till I was, 70 and like just be this person that everyone else I thought expected me to be. And so I was terrified of getting pregnant. I just didn't want to get pregnant. And fast forward to meeting my husband, he had a 1-year-old, and I fell in love with this man, and I fell in love with this little girl, and I was like, maybe I can be a mom. Like maybe I could do this, and I got pregnant, and for me, that was like the final pinnacle healing portion of my journey because finally my body was like, oh, sorry, it's just emotional because it was so
Yeah.
special. But it's like, it was finally for the first time ever, my body was like doing what it was like meant to do. And I know that kind of sounds archaic, but it's just like, I was like, my body has such a big purpose right now. And no matter what it looks like, it is like doing the coolest thing ever. And I was like, I need to nourish myself. I need to love myself. I just felt so connected. I like loved, my boobs grew, my bum grew, my belly grew, and I just like loved all the bumps. And I was like, oh, this is the coolest thing ever. And I just, for the first time ever in my whole life, I didn't focus on what my body looked like. I was just like purely focused on like what it was doing. And then,
And
giving
it's
birth to my
amazing.
daughter. It is so amazing. It is so truly amazing. And I remember like other moms would talk about this kind of stuff, and I would kind of roll my eyes. And I'm sure there's people that are going to listen to this that don't have children and don't want to experience motherhood that are like, oh, but, and it's fine. And I was in that space too, but for me, it truly was like life changing. And then when I found out I was having a daughter, it was even more so for me because I'm like, damn, like I've gone my whole life hating on this body, literally abusing this body, doing all these things to this body. And now I'm like growing my daughter in this body, and it was so
Yes.
powerful. And I have not had like a relapse resistance, nor do like I want to, because I never want my daughter to grow up watching mommy
Yes.
eat different suppers and oh, mommy is fat today, or like my daughters will never hear me call myself fat. They will. I'm always like, mommy's powerful, mommy's strong. Like I tell that my little 3-year-old,
Yes.
like, I am strong, I am powerful. Like that's like her like things that she says to
Yeah.
herself, and it's just like that's what the vibe that I want in my home for like the little women that I'm raising. And it's yeah, having children and especially having a daughter for me was just like everything I needed in my healing journey that like I had no idea I needed, and I almost missed out on because I was so afraid of like the physical changes that would come with that.
Definitely. Yeah. And then, after pregnancy, like you said, realizing that you want to be the role model for your daughters. You want to be the person that they see as strong and nourishing and
Yeah.
like living life to the fullest, right? And you could have never done any of those things, in that previous unhealthy mindset and body. And so I think that's amazing that, we can be this example for a mother. Like that toxic stuff can stop with us, right? For the next
Exactly.
generation, like they won't see it, they won't hear it, not in our
Oh,
households. And,
yeah.
having them see that, yeah, mommy can lift really heavy weight, same thing, with my kids, like
Totally.
they're like, oh, our mom is strong, we know she's
Yeah.
strong. And it's like, yes, like
Yeah.
I want them to see that. And I think that is so
Totally.
important. So,
Yeah.
okay. I kind of want to shift gears a little bit here. So
Mhm.
we know your journey and how becoming a mom and pregnancy really was like the icing on a cake for your healing. I want to hear about, and for our listeners too, what is your fitness and nutrition philosophy now that you teach to women that
Mhm.
is for health and vitality and longevity? What is your fitness and nutrition philosophy that you live by now?
So the one thing that you'll always hear me say to my clients is like all foods can fit in a healthy and balanced lifestyle. And I think that's such an important thing to own because so many women, and I'm sure you're the same, we have a very similar like avatar client, I would say, or ideal
Sure.
client, but it's like the women over 35 who has mine is anyways, like the woman over 35 who has again grew up in the household with watching mom do diet, so we kind of grew up with this belief system, and maybe mom, like whether she meant to or not, was always commenting on our bodies. um like even now, again, I love my mother and she's going to watch this, and bless your heart, mother, but like even now if like I lose 5 pounds, she's like, oh honey, have you lost some weight? And it's like, yes, but like also like who cares? You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's just I so many of the women that come into my program are like coming from that space, and then they've also done multiple diets. Maybe they got in shape for their wedding, then they had babies, whatever, this whole thing. And so now they're just confused. They're like, this diet says this and this diet says that, but then this one told me this, and then this person gave me a meal plan with an approved foods list, but I was allowed to eat whatever I wanted for
Right.
an entire day. And like, and just all of these different ideas and
All
labels
the
and whatever.
things.
So all the things. So I my method's called the reset method, and I named it that because I'm like, we are literally hitting reset, like a big old reset button on every single
Yep.
thing that you have heard, read, been taught, been shown, thought worked, whatever.
Yes.
And we're gonna find like the pathway that is uniquely for you, that makes sense for you, that fits into your family, your life, the season you're in. If you travel a lot, if you go for corporate lunches, like we just literally find the pathway. And I just, all foods can, and I stand firm by this, firmly, like
Absolutely.
they do can and do fit in a healthy, balanced lifestyle. And I think you and I were talking the other day. I was laughing because I posted a bowl of cereal that I was having, and someone was like, "Yeah, so it's okay to eat poison?" And I'm like, last I checked, this is a bowl of corn pops, not arsenic. And like, yes, I can
Right.
eat poison. Thank you. Like, I worked very, very hard to eat this poison in front of me. So yes, I'm going to enjoy my little 22 grams of corn pops. Thank you. But yeah, so for me, it's like those are the kinds of things that I teach, and that's my philosophy around nutrition. And so we do flexible nutrition in my program, and I just do a lot of education focus. It's very, very customized. And then my philosophy for training is like use weight training to build muscle and get strong and have longevity and functionality into later age, because a lot of my clients are having children later too. So it's like, guess what? If
Yeah.
my daughter waits till she's 40 to have a baby, like grandma's gonna be 80. like helping take care of a baby, you know, I'm going to be 80. So it's like,
Yeah.
I want to have all that. So it's like we use strength training for muscle, vitality, functionality, everything like that. We use cardio for heart health, never for fat loss. And we just focus
Awesome.
on overall movement. And those are my philosophies. It's like exercise should be fun. It should fit into your lifestyle. It shouldn't be daunting. It shouldn't be exhausting. You should never feel like you have to be at the gym for 2 hours. You should never feel like you have to, you know, work out 7 days a week or whatever. And so I'm just like, do the things that you love and figure out what those things are, and then you can do them for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's so important, I think, to re-educate or, like you said, reset people's brain about food
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the misinformation, I mean, we're both on social media. You know, if it wasn't both of our careers to be on there, I can tell you that like I probably wouldn't be on there, and I'm sure you
Same.
probably
I
feel the
say
same
that
about that.
all the time. I say that all
There's
the
so there's so
time.
much misinformation. And I think the one thing about like Strong Fitness Magazine and the women like you that are now the athletes in Strong Fitness Magazine are bringing a different perspective, a different angle to nutrition and mindset, and how empowering and wonderful that is for this next generation and for our generation, even to
Yeah.
realize that yes, you can eat all foods. Like that is
Yeah.
acceptable in a balanced diet. But it's also like,
Yeah.
have you ever considered, you know, how are you getting vitamins and minerals from your food? Are you eating foods
Exactly.
that have, you know, nutrition? Because yeah, it's cool to have a bowl of cereal, but it's also cool to have fruits and veggies. You know what I mean? Like you should have all of
Exactly.
it. There's not like a one or the
Everything
other
fits.
mindset.
Oh,
Yes.
exactly. Like, yeah, I always say to my women, and it's like there's black and then there's white paint. And like black is like this side and like white is this side. So it's like, oh, I'm on a diet or I'm completely off. And it's like you got to
Right.
grab those two
No,
colors and they mix and they literally make 50 shades of gray. And so it's like finding your shade of gray within that spectrum that works
that
uniquely for
works.
you. And I think
Right.
too, like when you're dealing with women that are over 35, we start having health complications. We start having high levels of blood glucose, whether that's from being stressed, from, you know, cortisol levels being jacked up, lots of,
Yeah.
you know, insulin sensitivities. There's like so many different like things that we have to think of when we're working with this population of women. And so it's like, yes, all foods can fit. And then we also have to, like you said, also look at sugar levels and like how much fiber are we getting, and like what are you doing for vitamin C? Are you getting enough iron? Like we start looking at all of these other
Right.
things as well.
Exactly. Exactly. Because, you know, it's like if somebody would have told me and you when we're younger, like, do you track the iron you're getting? You'd be like, what? No.
Why would
But how
I?
important that
Yeah.
now you're anemic and wonder why you don't have energy. But it's just like if you would have been eating iron rich
Yeah.
foods, all you know, what I mean, like it's just a different
Yeah.
perspective shift and focusing on what
Totally.
nutrition you get from foods, but also remembering that all foods fit in a
Yeah.
balanced, you know, nutrition setting. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's so awesome. And I love that. You know, it's like you see those influencers, people that go to the grocery store and try to scare you about, you know, eating this yogurt because it has so much
Oh,
sugar in
and
it.
yogurt
And
and
it's just like,
yes. Oh
and
my
it's like, oh my gosh, like, and like that yogurt could easily fit into a day of healthy nutrition. And who cares
God.
that it has a little bit of sugar? You know, just things like that. So, you know, that's the type of
Totally.
stuff that I know that we see that we're like, oh gosh, like, because people
Yes.
get so
Because then
confused
women
based
see
on
that.
that.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
People see that. And it's damaging. It's damaging even when you see a headline that says something about sugar or too much carbs or
Totally.
this or that. Because at the end of the day, that's not what we should be focusing on. You know, like you're
No.
saying, we need to focus on the whole picture. Everything can fit.
Yes.
And I think that's a great message, especially for, you know, the strong fitness community and just like
Mhm.
women in general.
Yeah.
Um, so, okay, and then let's talk a little bit about strength training. So, you
Mhm.
know, I know a lot of women are kind of apprehensive about strength training, or maybe they're going to Pilates 6 days a week, or they're just doing yoga, or they're just lifting like 2.5 pound weights. And,
Mhm.
you know, they've been doing this for now, you know, let's say this person is 45 and they've been doing this since they were 20 and they're scared to pick up something heavy,
Mhm.
right? There's that perception, right? They're
Yeah.
scared or they're scared to go heavier than 10-pound dumbbells. What would you say to this person?
Oh gosh. I this is such a hard thing because it's getting over this idea of like toning reps and that like women can get bulky. I think, you know, every woman has, and again, not a knock to personal choices, but everyone has seen, you know, the females who do supplement with steroids, and they are huge. They have big muscle belt, like big hard muscles and stuff. And
Sure.
so I think the
But because
general
they take
population,
drugs.
exactly. And I think the general population, like I can look at a photo of a girl who's in great shape and be like, you know, clients will send me stuff that, oh my gosh, look at this woman. She's over 40. And how come I don't look like that? I'm like, that woman's on steroids. And they're like, no, she's
Mm,
not. I know. Oh, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm telling you, you cannot look like that in 1 year at 41 or 45 or whatever if
Right.
you aren't supplementing with drugs. And like, so I think there's that side of things. And I think people need to talk about that more. It's like people are afraid to talk about steroids and steroid use and all of this stuff. But at the end of the day, it is prevalent. But the reason I'm pulling that in is because women are not predispositioned to get bulky. They are not
Right.
predispositioned to put on a ton of muscle.
Mhm.
And you would have
Mhm.
to lift, even using steroids, you would have to lift very, very, very heavy, a very consistently long workout sessions, eating like lots and lots and lots of protein and like all of the things to get big. Like ask any fitness
Right.
competitor who's tried to get big. It's a lot of work. So I think the biggest thing I would just say is like just go test your theory out. Like just like lean into the fear and go start lifting heavier. Do it for 1 year. And if you hate your body after 1 year, guess what? You can go back to your Pilates class and all the muscle will go away. And you'll like get exactly to where you were before. And so that's what I always kind of just say to people is like just lean into it for one
Oh,
year.
I love that. I love that
Shift
concept.
your perspective. It's like test this
Yeah.
theory out. You've never tried it. You've never tried it before.
Right.
So let's try it. And if you don't feel stronger and you don't feel better and you don't tone up and your body doesn't start looking more banging and your butt doesn't lift up and all of these problems that you're having don't go away, then you can go back
Yes.
to your Barry's boot camp class, go back to your spin classes, go back to your Pilates class, and don't lift any more weights. And they never do. Because the fact of the matter
Yes.
is that putting on muscle is where it's at. It just is.
Yeah.
And you have to lift heavy to do that. And it's so empowering as a woman. If you've never lifted heavy, it is like the most empowering thing to be like, yeah, I did that. I can do a pull up. I can deadlift over 200 pounds. I can do this. I can do that. Now I can go sprint on the treadmill like a baddie at 40 something because I'm taking care of my muscles, you know?
Yes.
So,
Yes. That's awesome. I love that perspective of just lean into the fear and
yeah,
give it a year
give it
and
a shot.
see how you feel. Give it a year, do something different out of your comfort zone and come
It is.
back. And yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll be right back in a moment with Brittany Chapman, our strong athlete cover model, in just a moment. Have you been killing it in the gym and would love to appear in the pages of Strong Fitness magazine? Contact us through our website, strongfitnessmag.com. We'd love to hear from you. Hey guys, we're back here with Brittany Chapman, the Strong Cover Special Edition athlete on the Best Body issue. And, you know, she's given us so many great tips and tricks from her fitness and nutrition philosophy. And in this issue of Strong Fitness, she focuses a glute building routine. And so, you know, every woman, it's super trendy now, thank goodness, to have a great big booty that is like healthy and strong. What are some of your biggest tips? I know, you know, pulling from the workout that you have in the magazine, but just in general, like what are some of your glute building tips?
Um, Piggybacking off of what we were literally just talking about is like you have to lift heavier than you think you do in order to build up your glutes. However, you need to learn to how to execute proper form first because when we're
Yes.
loading movement, say for example, like a hip thrust, if you are not getting a proper hip extension, then you know your lower back is going to take over a lot of the movement, and then you could end up with
Right.
like injuries or just not stimulating the muscle. You might grow a nice pair of hamstrings or something, but like you're not necessarily going to get your glutes to like their full potential. So I think, you know, when it comes to the exercise portion of glute training, it's like nail the form first, but then don't be afraid to quickly start loading it because there's only so many body weight
Sure.
glute bridges you can do before, you know, it stops stimulating the muscle. So form first,
Yeah.
start adding weight, keep adding weight. The frequency as well is a big thing. So like if you're only training them once a week, it's not going to be enough. My clients train their glutes 2 to 3 times a week.
Oh,
All
cool.
of our lower body days are more glute focused, and I personally do that as well. And then you got to eat. So I think, a lot of people come and they'll be like, I want to drop 15 pounds, but I want my butt to lift up in that time. And I want this and I want this. And it's like, those are all separate goals. Like those all require separate
Right.
nutrition approaches. And so if you want to grow any muscle, but specifically your glutes, like they take a lot of time. So you have to eat in a surplus for a minimum of 6 months, but like up to 12, and then do a cut
Yes.
to like get rid of any fat you've gained in that surplus time, and then reverse that and come to your maintenance. So I think those are kind of the two biggest tips I have in terms of nutrition and training. And then with glutes as well, as I've talked about earlier in today's podcast, but it's like you have to also respect genetics. So some people like myself I just naturally have more fat storage there. I have like a shorter kind of muscle insertion. So my muscles are like more
Makes it looks more
bubbly.
bubbly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more bubbly. So like someone else can build up their butt, but it might be like longer insertion. So it may be a different shape or whatever, right? So it's like just try not to get frustrated if like your butt doesn't look like mine or Gail's or whoever that you're looking at, right? I think when
Right.
we're drawing inspiration from people, I think it's important to recognize like everybody has different genetics. And so
Yes.
you're going to end up with the butt you kind of end up with. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be like rounder, higher, firmer, tighter than if you did nothing at all. So
Totally. And would you say, I know personally with my glute training, sometimes even like you said, starting with body weight movement, not nailing the form down, but also getting those images away in your head of what that exercise should look like, because it's more about what it
yeah,
feels like and activating the
yes,
muscles. And I know a lot of times with glute work, it's like you see people doing these extensions or these kickbacks or things, and it looks really pretty when you kick back like a dancer and have your leg really
totally.
high, right? But now you're not in the glute anymore. So it looks
Exactly.
beautiful. It'd make a pretty picture, but now you're in your low back or your hamstring and you're actually
Exactly.
not even stimulating the muscle that you're trying to. So
Yeah.
coming back to a place where, finding the feeling, that mind muscle connection between your brain and your glutes, and it might look different in the mirror
Yeah.
while you're doing the exercise than what you think it should, than what you see on social
Yeah.
media or what you think a pretty version of that exercise would look like. Would you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yes, totally. And I think a lot of people that get into working out don't actually know anything about anatomy. They don't know they
Sure.
don't know ranges of motion. They don't know how a muscle properly contracts. They don't realize like it's like, yeah, like a glute kickback is a great idea. Or like, there's a certain spot where the muscle contracts, and then it's like if you keep going through a range of motion, you're gonna lose that contraction because now another
Right.
muscle is going to take over to take you into that further. It's like deadlifts, right? Like stiff leg deadlifts. You'll see a lot of women that like their hips stop hinging, but they keep tipping forward at the waist. And it's like,
Right.
well, now you're just using your back like that. Now you have to use
Right.
your back to pull back up. Like, no wonder you got a back injury from doing deadlifts. So I think it's just also, taking that concept one step further. And that's why like working with a coach is always a great idea, especially when you're first learning,
Right.
whether it's like, I don't know what you do, but like my clients can send in videos to me of like them performing a movement.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay,
Absolutely.
look, like here your glutes flexed, here it's not. Look what happened. You kept kicking or you rotated to get extra range or whatever, right? And so
Yes.
you have that person who's looking at your movements like, hey, if you just did this, you're going to feel your glutes more. So go back and do that next week and let me know. And they're like instantly, oh, wow, I feel my butt so much more. I'm like, great,
Totally
amazing.
different.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so fun. I'm so happy that, big glutes, strong glutes, they are our largest muscles. So, really training them, nourishing our bodies to build them is kind of the way to go, right?
Totally. Totally. And there's so much more
Awesome.
than just like the aesthetic side of glutes. And I think that's also important to
Yes.
like, I call my glute program like perk up and power on, because it's like, if you don't have a strong glute, it can impact your core. It can impact your pelvic floor muscles. It can impact your posture. It can like, there's so many different things that it
Yes.
impacts. So having glutes isn't just about having like a big old booty. It's like also about just like, again, maintaining functional fitness and
Yeah.
like
Well,
independence into
yeah.
an older age. Yeah.
being our largest muscle group and people don't work them enough. It's like, no, those muscles, they are our
Totally.
biggest muscles. They need to be worked heavy and
Yeah.
often to build that healthy. Like it's like our body's armor, right? Like we want that armor
Totally.
to be healthy and strong. Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's awesome. So, a couple questions to finish out our interview today. First of all, think of the Strong reader, Strong Fitness Magazine reader, and what what do you think you would tell your younger self about being strong?
I would tell myself to not fear getting strong, and some of the things like we've already talked about today, but it's like it's a lot harder to put on muscle tissue and get strong as a woman, and the younger you can start, the better you will be. But having said that, it's never too late to start. And I think one of the things I love about Strong is that we have a broad representation of women. And so it's not just 20 to 25-year-old women on the covers. It's like women like me, like women like you. It's like, there's a lot of women. And I think we just need to realize, like, yeah, what I would tell my younger self, I guess, is just like, don't fear getting strong. And that's what I would hope, like, the readers of Strong would also take away is like, just, it's never too late to get started, but also just like start as soon as you can.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And I think everybody can, utilize that advice regardless, even if you're in your 50s or 60s, 70s, right? It's never too late to
Totally.
start lifting. Yes. And then my final question for you today is, what does being a strong woman mean to you personally?
Oh man. Being a strong woman to me is it transcends into all areas of my life. And that's again just going back to like what I coach women about is like when you find you're strong, you feel like unstoppable as a woman. I think so many
Yes.
women find themselves in like spots in life, whether it's relationships, jobs, like whatever the case may be, and they don't feel like they have a voice because they don't feel strong. They feel weak, they feel fragile, they feel like women aren't supposed to speak up and be strong. Maybe I speak up a little too much, but it's just like I think, being strong does transcend into all areas of your life. It lets you be like the leader in your household that you need to be for your children. It's, allows you to show up at work in your job in your business or whatever. And I think it just truly empowers you to to just show up for yourself. I don't really know how else to say it. I think being strong, physically strong, makes you mentally strong, emotionally strong, and it has a massive ripple effect into every single area of your life.
Awesome. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. All right. Brittany, I want to thank you personally for being on episode 1 of Strong Talks by Strong Fitness Magazine.
Thank you.
And I've loved getting to know you and talking to you and basically finding my BFF all the way in
I know,
Calgary.
right?
It's so awesome. Yes. So thank you so much for being here with me today. And you guys stay tuned. Episode 2, we have our March and April cover athlete. And I can't wait for you guys to meet her and continue these strong talks. Until then, you guys, thank you.